Welcome back and good morning once again. If you're just joining us, this is still Daybreak Africa. Well, today we'll be discussing the student loan policy debates, analyzing its role and implementation in our educational system. With our guest, Honorable Stephen Adewale, who is the SDP Chairman, Ondo Chapter. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak Africa.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Now, for me, I guess I would just go straight to this point. The thing is, well-advanced countries, including the US, have serious issues when it comes to their student loan policies and scheme generally. Now, when it comes to Nigeria, it's more like we have been plagued for almost forever when it comes to proper implementation. So we generally have lack of proper implementation in what projects we tend to actually focus on. Now, for you, do you see this? How visible is this student loan policy in Nigeria, considering our track record for lack of proper implementation so far?
Yes, thank you very much. And let me start with the Tinubu government, because since Tinubu has come on board, a lot of people have started claiming that happens to be the best regime or the best democratic administration that we've ever witnessed since 1999. We live in a country where everybody, especially our politicians, believe all of us are supposed to have a short memory. If we look at what the administration has done between May 29 till date, you realize that they've not done anything unique when you compare what they've done to what the past government, especially since 1960, has ever done. The same government, the same problems, the same crises that we witnessed in the past, the same implementation challenges, the same policy somersault that we've witnessed since 1960 is the same that we have been witnessing since they come on board. For example, they changed all the service chiefs. That will not be the first time that service chiefs will be changed. And remember that even all the service chiefs, we did not bring the service chiefs from heaven. They were the people who have been part of the system for a very long time. You brought in a new IG, but the IG has been part of the system for a very long time. He was a two-time commissioner of police, and there is no record that when he was the commissioner that he did better than his successors or the people that he met on the position that you made. Then we talk about the new chief of staff or the new chief defense staff. These are the people who have been part of the system for a very long time. Then also, even if you look at the declaration of the president, especially what the president said 3 days ago, that statement of policy, the fuel subsidy is gone. That statement was actually removed from the speech that he decided to inject it himself. That shows that we still have government who fail to think of the implication of some of the policies that they make. Since 1960, one of the problems that we've had is the implementation policy, and it's difficult to implement when you've not really done serious research, when you don't even know the reason why you are coming up with a policy. And virtually all the policies that our government till date that they've introduced, they are not new policies. We have been recycling policies over time. So look at the Buhari administration, for example, when it was there was a time they introduced what they call Ruga policy. Yes. At that time, people said, "Oh, this was going to be was going to serve as deterrent to all the crisis between." Farmers and the herders. But if you look at that policy, people who understood history made us understand at that time that policy was not actually new. The same thing with this student loan policy. Student loan policy is not actually a new policy. It's just that the APC administration decided to color it with propaganda. And because a lot overwhelming majority of Nigerians don't even know anything about history, so they feel it's actually new. It was a policy that had been introduced since 1972 by the regime of General Yakubu Gowon. At that time, civil war had just ended, and the government was trying to bring people together. They introduced what they called Operation 3Rs. That's reconciliation, rehabilitation, and reconstruction. So as part of the policy, so they want to do a lot of things. They want to introduce measures that will make life easier for people. So as a result of that, they introduced one of the schemes they introduced at the time was National Youth Service Corps. Then they started a lot of massive constructions, building of a National Theatre at Igomu, National Stadium, a lot of other things. Then they also introduced this student loan. But if you look at the student loan at that time, if you place it side by side, that's the content of what was introduced in 1972. If you place it side by side with the content of what was introduced recently, virtually everything is the same. The only difference between the two was that the Gowon's policy, it was meant to cater not only for the tuition, it was meant to cater for student accommodation, procurement of books and all that, while the Tinubu's own student loan policy is basically targeting tuition. So that means there is no difference in the content in everything. So the payback policy still gives you like 20 years window for you to be able to pay the money back. But our government failed to study why that policy failed in 1972. Why virtually all the people collected that money between 1972 and 1988. Government record, that's according to the record because if you are talking about Nigeria, we are talking of a country that don't have record.
True.
So the record that we see made us understand that between 1972 and 1988, we spent about 46 million naira. And 46 million naira of that period, when that was the period when naira was just when dollar was just 4 naira. It means we'll be talking of billions of naira now. So that money, they were not even able to get 2 million naira out of the money, which means that all the people who collected the money, all of them defaulted. So, and they don't even have proper record even till date to be able to say, oh, these were the people. Most of our professors, our leaders of industries today, they were the people who benefited from that student loan. But today, many of them, virtually all of them, they failed to pay back. So it's not actually a new thing, and it has more negative and more side effects than positive side effects. It's not until we get to the point in the country where our government will be able to do proper research before coming up with policies. It's good to be coming up with new things. And you know why a lot of people are enthusiastic, why they are happy with the new administration, is because we just went through 8 years of an administration that failed to do virtually nothing. So as a result of that, people believe that any action is better than nothing at all.
Now,
so
from 1970, you spoke about how this policy has been and then ended around 1970, now 1980.
In 1988.
1988. Now, I think you spoke about recycling of policy in Nigeria. And now, it's more like Nigeria as a country tends to have an issue when it comes to continuity. Now, do you actually foresee this loan issue to have just an 8-year span?
It's not only happening in Nigeria. It's happening in quite a number of countries in the third world countries. And the problem we have in the third world countries, which is more peculiar to Nigeria in this case, is because we don't have continuity, just as we don't have a government that people who believe in government policies. People believe in introducing short-term policies that will make their government popular. So that's why when they are coming on board, many of them will not want to continue with the policy that had been introduced by their successors, because they believe that people who voted them into the office will believe that they have not done anything new. So as a result of that, they would rather come up with something with something cosmetic that will not actually have a lasting effect on the development of the country or the growth of the people. So as a result of that, with that 4 years or 8 years will just be a wasted. Will just be a waste. Then the new regime will come on board again. Look at this new administration that just came on board. They have to fire all the directors of board and parastatals. What I tell you is that now this new administration will now have the authority and the power to even bring in over 30,000 people to give them employment as political appointees. So that's what they keep doing from time to time. And by the time those people came, by the time they come on board, many of them will not even understand what the operation of the department where they put them. We've already recently a home minister of education, Adamu, who were there for nearly 8 years, came and said before the Buhari administration that before he was appointed, he knew practically nothing about education. And it has been said that no nation can develop beyond the level of its education. So which means that is actually one of the most sensitive the most sensitive aspect of the country. That's the most sensitive sector, that you are not just to employ, and you are not to employ anybody. You are to, even that's the sector that even president, just as they are paying more attention to NNPC, they're even supposed to even pay more attention to the educational sector. But over time, our government has failed to implement what ought to be implemented. There are a lot of things that have been introduced. Now, many of them, they are already, so they are adopting and implementing the policy of the international organizations like UNO and IMF in particular. That's International Monetary Fund and the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which you know as World Bank, IBRD. So, but they are good at implementing those policies when it only favors them. When it comes to the removal of subsidy, when it comes to giving big people in Nigeria, especially the big men who have big industries like, I don't want to mention all so that it will not amount to publicity, when it comes to giving them tax holidays. So they can do that. But when it comes to implementing part of that advice that's been given by those organizations in order to develop the country, they will not do that. For example, IMF and UNESCO made it clear that for countries to develop, that those countries must at least allocate 26% of their budget to annual budget to education. Our government has failed to do that. In fact, it was so worse under Buhari that at a point they had to even budget not up to 3% to our educational system, and it's not looking like anything will be meaningful difference even under the present administration.
As a person, I'm beginning to feel you don't exactly believe in the genuity of this policy. Is that what I'm saying?
No, if you look at the policies that have been introduced in the past, and if you look at the speed at which that policy was introduced, you will know that that policy is not likely to amount to anything. In fact, that is going to create more burden to the Nigerian masses.
How so exactly? People. How would this?
Now let me break it down. Now we are talking about the student loan policy. One of the reasons why it failed in 1972 was because that policy believes in what they called educational reflective part. What I mean by educational reflective part is that government is not only going to be spending. Since it was when that policy was introduced, that they started, before then everything was free in Nigerian system. Virtually all the students went to university at the time. They ate free food, no tuition, nothing. So they did everything free of charge. In fact, even books, they got everything free of charge at that time. But when that policy was introduced, they now made it clear that okay, it's not only government that is going to be investing in education, that it's supposed to be it's supposed to be a general contribution, which means that the masses too must also contribute. Now look at this policy, the same way it was at that time, that's the same way it is now. Now where are they going to be getting that money? That's the money they will be given to the Nigerian students. Now, three major organizations will be contributing that money. The first one is Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS. So Federal Inland Revenue Service will be contributing 1% of its annual revenue. That's all the accrued revenue that they generate every year. Then the Nigerian Customs Service will also contribute 1% of its annual revenue, of its annual generated revenue, while the Nigerian Immigration Service will also do the same. Then they will also get 1% from what we are making from oil. That's from the crude oil, from the sales of crude oil. So 1% will go into it. Now we don't know the statistics for this year, but if you look, the last statistics that we had that is made available was 2021 statistics. So now, if you look at the 2021 statistics, it means that FIRS, based on the generated revenue of FIRS, that's Federal Inland Revenue Service, in 2021, it means that FIRS will be contributing 101 billion naira to that pool. Then it means that Nigeria Customs Service will be contributing 52 million naira. Then it also means that NCS will be contributing, that's custom, NIS rather will be contributing 46. So that's NIS, NCS and FIRS. Then the 1% that will now be coming from our crude oil, it means nearly about 500 million naira will be coming from that, which is the 1% of what those people. So which is the large part of the money will be coming from FIRS. Now if you put all this money together, everything will amount to about 200 200 billion naira. Now that 200 billion naira, let's now assume that you want to allocate that money to 2 million Nigerian students. So it means that at least 100,000 naira will be allocated to each of the Nigerian students. And don't forget that this new act only targeting tuition fee. The implication is that now the government is now making it clear, if you read the act, now the government is now making it clear that education still remains the reflective part, which means that to them education is extremely expensive. So now what they are saying is that they are not the only people that should be contributing. So which means Nigerians should also contribute to the education of their children. So the implication now is this. So it means now that 100,000, it means now each of the schools will now have ability to increase the school fees, because now government is saying through that act that they are not going. If you read what ASU, the statement of ASU, that's one of the things that ASU was trying to criticize there, but it's just that they didn't write it in black and white for people to really understand that if care is not taken, education is now going to become, it's not going to be a kind of exclusive. It's not going to be a right again. It's going to be a privilege. Education is going to become a commodity, whereby each university will now be at liberty to introduce tuition. And from the statistics they made us from the recent statistics, they said, okay, for an average university to survive in Nigeria, so you will need, and each student will have to pay 250,000 naira. Let me give you an example of Ekpoma, Ambrose Ali University Ekpoma. Now they are paying close to that amount. Now every year now that institution is generating over 3 billion naira just from what the university students pay. And when they introduced that policy during the Oshiomhole administration, what they said was that it's going to be farewell to strike, that now there will be development across board. But now they've been paying that, the people have been paying that money through their nose for the past 4 or 5 years. But if you go to Ambrose Ali today, if you were there 5 years ago, you will not see any difference from what is on ground now to what was there before then. Now the same poor welfare welfare system that lecturers were criticizing then, that same system is still in existence now, and students continue to pay, and the education system continue to degenerate. So what that means is that it's not going to be extended to federal institutions. It means in an institution like maybe OAU, for example, students will have to be paying as high as 400,000 naira. Don't forget that that's what is happening in a lot of countries in the West, whereby the more recognized the university is, the higher they pay. It means that the time will now come that an average student in Nigeria will not be able to even afford to go to those institutions. Don't forget that they've even started another part that will make you to understand that this policy is going to have is going to be counterproductive to Nigeria educational system. Now recently, JAMB came out with the announcement that they reduced the admission the admission cutoff mark to 140. What they are trying to tell you now is that the time will now come that even if you score 140, if a student scores 300, if that student cannot afford to pay to pay the astronomical fees being introduced by maybe Ahmadu Bello or Unilag or any of those leading institutions, there's somebody with 140 that can access it to be able to go. So that's what they are saying. Now let's now assume that you are able to convince them, even not minding the clause. They are saying that for you to even be able to access that money, you need to be able to at least to prove that your family is not generating up to 500,000 naira every year. Then you need to be able to get a level 15 officers, who are 2 of them. Then you need to be able to do a lot of other things. Now let's now assume that you're able to get all that. Now government is saying, okay, they are not even talking about the mode of disbursement. Now in a country where we know that we have poor implementation, just as you asked earlier, in a country where we know that we don't even have proper record, we don't even know the number of students that we have in Nigeria. Nobody in this government or in the past government can come out and tell us categorically that these are the exact number of Nigerian students, because they don't even plan for them. And a country that wants to introduce policies that will favor Nigerian youth, then they will even have to know the number of youths that they are even going to address. So even people who are passing through the NYC every year, they don't even have means of monitoring it, because there are a lot of them that are not even passing through that passing through that scheme. There are people who graduate from maybe from school of nursing. There are people who graduate from colleges of education. There are people who graduate from other monotechnics who have no access to the National Youth Service Scheme. So now, how are you going to bring in those ones? Remember, our federal government has a lot of monotechnics, which means that money is going to go into is also going to get to those people. So now, how are you going to how are you going to put those people into consideration when it comes to documentation? Then aside from that, now you are now saying after the National Youth Service, students must start paying back 3 years after. So now they are not even talking about how to get that, they are not even talking about the employment in a country where inflation keeps rising on a daily basis, and where even a lot of people that are even working, many of them are even underemployed, not even employed, because 70% of those who are working in Nigeria, 70% of them are underemployed. What they've been earning in 3 years, 4 years, that's what they are still earning till date, and a lot of and things continue to rise. So which means that those people, their level of survival 3 years ago is not even poor than it was 3 years prior. So these are the challenges that we have, and that should tell you that this is actually going to become another white elephant project in the long run. That's why I'm saying virtually all the policies that have been introduced so far since this new administration had come on board, they are not actually progressive policies. They are not people-oriented policies, because they've not put people in mind. It's more or less like they just want to look at the removal of fuel subsidy. How can you remove fuel subsidy without even consider how people will cope with the side effect of that removal? You remove something that you just want people to continue to float. And now till date, nearly 2 months, over a month after, we don't even know the direction of the government, either at the federal level or even at the state level. There's even more confusion at the state level. And now we are talking about student loan. Now that student loan, how are they going to factor in those students that are already paying astronomical fees in colleges, in state owned universities? What that means is that students who are paying nearly about 250,000 naira now in state-owned universities, or they are paying 300,000 naira in state-owned universities. In fact, there is one university in Ekiti, just a newly upgraded university. It was a college of education before, then they just upgraded it to university, Bamidele Olumilua University, a state-owned college of education before, now a state-owned university. Now that school, if you are getting admission to that school, you pay nothing less than 400,000 naira in a school where they don't even have recognized professors. So now if students are paying that for an education that will not worth it at the end of the day, if you are paying that for an education that you graduate that you not even be able to defend the certificate, because one of the problems we have with our educational system is that the students that we are producing, the students are not employable. So in those days, organizations will bring them out there, they will teach, they will train them, but organizations don't do that again. Now what they look for is already made. That's why you see many of the people who are getting high-paid jobs, especially in all those oil companies and other, they were people who studied abroad, who are already familiar with the system. So these are the problems that we have. So you leave what you are supposed to do, but you are introducing something that you know that in the long run is going to cause more problem, because they are already saying it, they are already making it clear that education is that they are going to introduce tuition fee. And you see universities are already making that move, and all the federal government agencies are already enabling them by introducing a ridiculous cutoff mark that will now discourage brilliant students from gaining admission to the universities of their choice. So these are the problems on ground. So if people now graduate, let's now assume that you are able to go through that system as a brilliant Nigerian student. You are able to go through the system. Now you graduate. Now after the graduation, now you start. So what next? Now you go for youth. Now you go for your youth service. Now they continue to pay you 33,000. That will not even be up to what you spend on transportation on a daily basis. And remember that most of the state-owned institutions, they don't even pay. Even some of the private institutions so many of them that will accept core members, they will pay them just 5,000 naira 8,000 naira. Even those that are even paying 20, 25,000, it's not even up to anything in considering the kind of inflation that the country is going through now. So now people will go through that. So after that, so what next? Where is the job? So what is government going to do about that? Because if you go through 4-year system and you're already owing 2 million naira, so how are you going to start your life? Now in the United States of America that you mentioned, where they even have records, where they have documents, you realize that a lot of youth, if you read the statistics, many of them are even afraid to get married. There are people who have graduated as far as 1990 and they are still in debt till date. So it's everywhere. If government wants development for Nigeria, if they want to improve the living condition of Nigerians, the best they could do is to introduce scholarships to encourage brilliant students. Then aside from introduction of scholarship, then you now introduce grants. Convert that student loan to grant. Let students know that by the time they are going to universities, that they are actually going to university to learn. Not for them to be there and to start thinking about the future that is not yet there. That's because true. They know that they are going to be in debt in future.
Thank you very much for coming to Daybreak Africa. I think at this point, time has always been a constant for this program. But we hope to have you next time. It's more like we still have plenty to talk about. At this point, we'll call it a wrap from our Ondo studio and be handing you over to our Lagos studio. We will have so much more for you. I remain Ezekiel, Ogar.
I am Fatimah, Ibrahim. Hi.